Welcome to Ed Leader with your host, Dr. Rob Jackson. Join Dr. Jackson for conversations and reflections on improving educational leadership from the classroom to the boardroom and beyond. Educational leadership is an ever-evolving opportunity to make a real and lasting difference in the lives of students, parents, and the community. And now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Jackson.
Hi friends, welcome to the Ed Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Jackson, and I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I am so honored that the Ed Leader Podcast continues to grow around the world. In the last week, a listener tuned in from Bangladesh, bringing the total number of countries where Ed Leader is heard to 68. Wow! The top 10 countries ranked by the number of listens include number 10, Brazil, number 9, Japan, number 8, China, number 7, Egypt, number 6, France, number 5, the United Kingdom, number 4, Germany, number 3, Australia, number 2, Canada, and number 1, the United States. I hope that listeners in each of the top 10 countries and all 68 of the countries where Ed Leader is listened to are finding value in the podcast and that it's helping along your personal and professional journeys. If you have not, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast player and share it with your network of colleagues and friends. The reviews, no matter how concise, drive the algorithms that help Ed Leaders find the podcast no matter where in the world they are, and clearly it's working. Thank you again for your kind gift of your comments and positive ratings and reviews. Remember that you can find show notes, links to references that are cited during each episode, and find each of the Ed Leader podcast episodes at drrobjackson.com. In the United States, we celebrate Veterans Day on November 11th. In Europe and much of the rest of the world, Armistice Day is celebrated at the same time because on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, Armistice was signed, bringing to an end World War I, a war in which over 20 million people had lost their lives. In a time where a war is being fought in the Gaza Strip and in the Ukraine, and understanding the cost that is borne by military personnel and their families, taking some time to consider how we can support military-connected students and families is time well spent. Understanding that military-connected students and families transition on average 6 to 9 times in a military child's academic career, we should endeavor to provide every flexibility possible to ensure that they have a smooth transition when they arrive and that their unique needs are met while they are with us. I'm excited to have a conversation about supporting these students and families with a highly regarded state educational leader, a fellow veteran, and my friend. Please help me welcome the incredible Dr. Angie Mullenix to the Ed Leader Podcast. Tin Hut, let's get to it. Dr. Angie Mullenix, I am so excited to have the opportunity to have a conversation with you. You are one of my heroes for so many reasons, and particularly to have an opportunity to talk with you about something you're passionate about is really excited. But first, welcome to the Ed Leader Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
The work you do supporting schools and school systems and educators across our state is absolutely amazing. Share with our listeners kind of the work you're doing, and I know it's broad and seemingly all-encompassing, but just in general, tell us about the work you do to support so many.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So my role at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction is sort of a twofold role. I am the Director of Innovative Practices and Programs, and then I'm also our State Military Liaison. So with the Innovative Practices and Programs, I'm fortunate that I get to work across the whole agency as well as the entire state to lift up our innovative practices that are happening across the state and elevate those in our Promising Practices Clearinghouse. I also oversee our CCRG program, our Career and College Ready Graduate Program. And then I work across the research and evaluation team with some of their projects, helping them out. and some other areas across the department, including competency-based education, portrait of a graduate, and school performance grade redesign. So I'm really fortunate in the innovative space that I get to kind of dabble in a lot of different areas. As the State Military Liaison, I also oversee all of the work connected to our military connected population and help to bring in awareness to those students out there and our administrators and teachers about enlistment as a post high school option for our students. So I'm able to kind of have a twofold role with that as the military liaison. In my work with supporting our military connected students, one of the key projects that I oversee is our Purple Star Award recognition as well.
I tell you, as I sit here and think about just the broad spectrum of all the things you mentioned, from the work you do in the in uplifting and amplifying innovation across the state and our school systems, and then the work you do with our military connected families, which is certainly what I want to spend quite a bit of time getting into. I'm just sitting here wondering, how do you keep it all straight in your head? Like, the podcast, the listeners are typically leaders and educational leaders who all have lots of things they have to do in the course of a normal day. It just seems like you have so much to keep track of. Like, what's your strategy for keeping track of that? We have 115 school systems. You're supposed to be supporting us all. How do you do that? How do you keep that straight in your head?
I am fortunate that I work with some really great colleagues. I have a really great team that works with me. I have a military liaison consultant, and I also have a CCRG program administrator. So those two individuals really help me out a lot with CCRG and our military connected work. And then I'm part of the innovation team. And so in that space, we have the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration, our research and evaluation team, NCVPS, and our Office of Charter Schools. So I work with some really great directors in that space, as well as Dr. Andrew Smith, our Assistant Superintendent of Innovation. And so they kind of help me out to keep me straight and keep me informed about some work happening within the innovation space. And then I also just personally make sure that I am highly organized. I am a military veteran myself. And so I think having that organization that I have at the department has come from being a veteran. And so I'm really happy that I have that organizational skill and that I can apply that to all of the different spaces that I'm in at DPI and serving across the state.
Well, I love that. And I appreciate, one, what you shared about having a great team. There is so much importance around selecting teammates when we have that opportunity, working to build our relationships with our teammates, to support them and be supported by them. And so that's huge and fabulous and an important piece to all of us being able to be successful. I appreciate that you shared your military background. In our country, and of course we have listeners around the world now, which still surprises me a bit, but in our country, we are preparing to celebrate Veterans Day. And so having the opportunity to speak with a veteran just seems like perfect timing. So first, I just want to say thank you for your service. You know, we share that background in that we're both veterans. And it's not something that we necessarily, or at least for me, not something I necessarily talk about every single day. I consider myself an educator, and that's kind of the perspective that I bring to all the things I do. But I'm aware of all that I learned while serving, for me, in my case, in the Navy. I enlisted in the Navy right out of high school. That really impacts my work, particularly around organization and understanding things like chain of command. And there's lots that come with that. But as we kind of move our conversation into support of military connected families, I'd like to kind of go backwards a bit. And if you would, share with our listeners your own military experience, how you decided to go that route, what you experienced a little bit, and then we'll kind of move from there. So tell us about Angie the veteran.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was probably the furthest person you would ever have thought would have joined the military. I was a cheerleader all through school. Absolutely loved cheerleading. I ran cross country for a few years and also swam a little bit on the swim team. So I was fairly athletic. I was an average student, but I was the youngest of three children, and I came from a fairly impoverished background. My parents worked in factories in Indiana, and I saw my siblings take out a lot of student loans when they went to college. And I knew that was probably going to be my future as well. And I really wasn't interested in that. Having an impoverished background, I also had parents who did accrue a lot of debt. And I saw how much they struggled with that daily. And I just knew I didn't want that. And so I didn't want to graduate high school starting out on that foot and not knowing how to ever come out of that debt background. And so my high school senior year, I made the decision that I was going to shift gears. I wasn't going to cheer my senior year. I was going to run cross country again and get myself in shape and join the Army. And so I joined the Army Reserves. And I graduated high school midterm my senior year. So at 17 years old, I left and went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I went to basic training in military police school. And then I graduated that in May and came back and went through my high school graduation ceremony 2 days later. I went to college since I was in the reserves, I was able to go to college. And I went to college for a semester and decided I actually really wasn't sure college was for me after all anyway. And so I shifted and went to active duty. And then I came to Fort Liberty, which was Fort Bragg at the time. And I served for 4 years on Fort Bragg as a military police paratrooper. And that kind of helped me to really determine what I wanted to do with the rest of my life and really set the stage that I was prepared for college at that point. I was a little bit older, in my early 20s, had the funding that I would need to go to college and not worry about the debt. And so that kind of started my path in the military. And that's what led me through college and now into education.
See, I love that. And I love the fact that you particularly shared that, somebody looking at you early in high school might not have thought of you as someone who military would even be an option. And it wound up being the option, the perfect option for you. And so I do think for particularly our high school educators, the reminder that enlisting in the military after high school is a fabulous post-secondary opportunity for students, particularly students you and I share a lot in common, who may not have the family resources to go to college right away and may not be ready, quite frankly. I was also 17 when I went into the military and can't imagine how poorly I would have done in college had I gone right into to college. But by the time I finished my military service, I was ready. And so that is a wonderful pathway for students and for more students than we might suspect. And so I won't necessarily turn the podcast into a recruitment podcast for the military service, though I certainly think highly of my own service. Instead, I want to turn to a passion point for you and how fabulous that you have the opportunity to pull together the work you've done as an educator and your own background as a veteran to serve as our state military liaison. And so first, just kind of quickly, you mentioned earlier in our conversation about this program that our State Department of Education, here called the Department of Public Instruction, has, where schools and school systems are recognized with a Purple Star Award. But tell us about that recognition program, what it is and what it does, and what it stands for, all the things. So tell us about that program.
Sure. So I came to the Department of Public Instruction in October of 2019. And when I came, one of the projects that I was asked to start up was the Purple Star Award recognition for our state. At that time, I think there was about 17 states that had the Purple Star Award recognition. And with our state having such a high military connected population, that was one project that the leadership saw value in. And so I worked with we have some military liaison counselors that work within some of our school districts across the state. And so I worked with them to develop this award recognition and to launch it statewide that first year. And so we launched it in the fall of 2019. And that very first year, we actually had a pretty good turnout, which showed us that there were some schools out there that were already doing some work to support our military connected students. We had a total of 132 awarded schools across our state that first year. And as part of developing that award recognition, one thing that we were intentional about was to ensure that schools were participating in annual professional development about how to support their military connected students, that they were providing artifacts about other opportunities for our military connected students. That could be recognition programs and some other avenues to show their support. That they had a designated point of contact at the school, that if a parent moved in and said or was looking to move into that school district or charter school, that they were a military connected family, that there was somebody who would answer that phone and be their point of contact. So some really simplistic touch points, but they were really meaningful to our military families that often face a lot of transitions in and out. And so we continued to build that award recognition over the last few years. And this past year in 2023, that was our fourth year. And we grew that program to have 336 total awarded schools. We really hope to continue to grow that, because a lot of districts and charter schools might not realize that we actually have military connected students across our entire state, and a lot more than they might anticipate at a first thought. So it's really important that folks across North Carolina, with one of our largest military populations, is really being thoughtful about those military connected students and their unique needs.
There's no question. And I can say for myself, having served in districts that were literally surrounded by military bases, so many more military connected families in those areas, and districts that were further away from military bases, still there are military connected families. Now, you've used that term a couple of times, military connected families, and I think that term is really broader than we may first imagine. And so if you would, especially for our ed leaders who may not be familiar with that term or really understand what it is we're talking about, when you use the term military connected family, what does that mean?
Yeah, and you're right. It is much broader than a lot of people might think. So it is definitely our families that are tied to the military because of active duty service, meaning they have a parent, the child has a parent or legal guardian who serves full time in the military. But it also includes our National Guard population. We have a large National Guard population across the whole state of North Carolina, and our reserve population, military reserve population across the state. Again, that's a very large population, but it also includes those families whose parents or legal guardians have retired from the military or separated within the past year. Those veterans, that year timeframe, it still includes those students as military connected. And so when you think about that, a lot of times people think that it's our students near Fort Liberty or Camp Lejeune, those larger military installations that we have. But sometimes those families retire and they move out to the mountains or, to the coastal areas elsewhere in North Carolina, and they're still within that 1 year time frame. Those are still military connected students.
Absolutely. Well, and when we start to think about the number of National Guard armories that are located throughout communities all over the place and on the Coast Guard bases, I mean, certainly just the numbers can be surprising. And then, of course, there's also families who live closer to bases that actually work on the base. It may not be a part of the military in terms of serving on active duty or reserve duty, but are also connected to the military that way. And so it is a huge population. Now, I've read that for some of our military connected students and families that they'll transition an average of 6 to 9 times during a child's academic career, which creates its own set of challenges for students and families. And so as you've had the opportunity to see the applications and to work with schools, this growing number of schools that are clearly focused on the needs of military connected families and military connected students, what are some of the things that schools are doing to support students and families that have really stood out to you as that's really a best practice? So if there's a school that maybe hasn't thought about how they're serving their military connected families, what are some of the things they need to be thinking about?
So one of the requirements for the Purple Star application is an essay component to some questions about the military interstate children's compact. And that is our legal guidance that really helps states to know the authority that those military families have when they're transitioning in and out of schools. So military students who might transition mid-year, they really need to have the same opportunities that those students who have been there for that entire year have. And that military interstate compact helps to do that. And so as part of the Purple Star application, schools, the points of contact completing the Purple Star applications have to identify their knowledge and awareness of the military interstate compact. And so those schools that are really understanding the military interstate compact, the verbiage that's included in that, and how that protects students and are really referring back to it when they do have students transferring in and out, those are the schools that are really, really showing strong support for our military families. I would also add to that, we have some schools that have done some kind of gone above and beyond to support their military families. We recently had a school district that held a military fair at one of their elementary schools, and they publicized that across the entire school district that everyone was invited. They had bouncy houses and lots going on. But at the heart of it was the support for military families. And so the military fair had a huge showing from across the entire district. So events like that can really help bring the entire community together and understand those unique needs of our military connected students are really also the ones that are very strong for our Purple Star Award recognition.
And all of that is so important. And so a kind of real life example of that in terms of the interstate compact for military students, high school athletics. We have 3 seasons in the state of North Carolina: fall, winter, spring. Winter, among the sports that are contested during the winter, is basketball. It actually spans our fall semester and our spring semester. If a military student arrived after basketball tryouts, the school might have a rule of, if you didn't try out, you don't get to participate. But in this case, if the military student was already on their basketball team, they have the right to be a part of the basketball team. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we are doing things for military students that we wouldn't necessarily do for all students, but not because we have to, but because it's the right thing for these students whose family member is serving all of us and offering themselves in service and potentially offering as much as their life to protect our freedoms. And the least thing we can do is tweak some of our procedures at the school level to be friendly to military children so that our active duty and reserve duty military family members can do what they have to do in the military and not worry about their children. It just feels like it is an easy thing to ask of us. Take care of the children of our military members so that they can focus on the things they have to focus on.
Absolutely. Yes. And I would say, I interact with school districts across the entire state. And I would say that typically when there is a concern that the family doesn't feel like they're being heard, it's because the school district isn't aware that those are a military connected children, military connected family. And once they do have that awareness, very much above and beyond to help them out and to try and do what's right by those children and the family members. So I would say that's, very strong across our state in general. I would also add to that one piece that I didn't talk about for our military connected families. It's not a part of our Purple Star Award recognition, but is equally important to touch on is the support for our military spouses who may be also transferring in and out of North Carolina. Regarding becoming teachers in our school districts. We have a lot of military connected spouses who are licensed in multiple states because we know it's a state-based licensure process. And so we do offer expedited licensure at the Department of Public Instruction for those military connected spouses. And all they need to do is make sure they reach out to the Department of Public Instruction and let them know that they are military connected spouses. And they'll work to expedite that through, because we know that sometimes families move in August, September, toward the very beginning of the school year, and they still want to be teachers in our school districts. And so I think that's also really important to think about the spouses who are coming in and serving as educators as well.
There's no question. And that is so, so huge. And not every military spouse may be aware of that, particularly licensed teachers as they move. And so, across the country, we are starved for great educators. So anytime we can help a great educator easily move into our area, then that's just smart on our part. And so I would certainly encourage our ed leaders, when you have the opportunity to interact with a military spouse who's just coming to the area, to make sure they're aware of things like expedited licensure processes for them as one way for us to support military families. Well, Dr. Mullenix, as we kind of prepare for Veterans Day and beyond, we should be celebrating our veterans, or at least honoring and respecting them every single day of the year. But as we kind of prepare for that celebration, and as you think about it, what are the kind of stepping away from just service to military connected families, but really kind of honoring our veterans as part of our work to help create great citizens in our country? What are kind of the things that you've seen schools do in celebration of Veterans Day, or in making students aware of veterans? What are the kind of the great practices you've seen?
Gosh, yeah. So I would say just about every school district that I know of across our state has some sort of veterans recognition program for Veterans Day, which I think is awesome to see. And that happened before we had the Purple Star Award recognition. Lots of schools out there that aren't Purple Star schools that are still having that recognition because they understand the sacrifice that those those veterans have taken to serve our country. And so I think there's a lot of pride in our state to show that support. I've seen some schools that have a lot of schools that have their veterans come in, and they may have a breakfast or a luncheon, a ceremony. They typically have some guest speakers from the military who come in. And it's just it's nice to see that they're being thoughtful in these ceremonies, and that they're also accommodating, people's schedules with the ceremonies too. I see them in the morning, I see them in the afternoon, and, in the evening. And so just really local communities are being thoughtful about their veteran population, regardless of the size of the veteran population. Some of our communities obviously have a high number of veterans, and some have, less numbers of veterans. But regardless, I think across our state, schools are really taking pride in providing some sort of recognition for those veterans. And when they're inviting those veterans in, those are often veterans connected to those students in the schools. It can be parents, it can be grandparents, it might be great grandparents. But it's a time for those children in those schools to bring in their veterans, and they're often very proud of them also, and to invite them in and to honor and recognize them. And so it's just kind of a heartwarming time for us to go in and visit some of those ceremonies and see what's happening across the state.
There's no question. I just think to all of the Veterans Day ceremonies that I've been a part of during my career as an educator, and it's always heartwarming. And I always walk away knowing more than I did, because our veterans are such rich conveyors of history, and really this understanding of what it is, the blessing we have to live in our country, and the price that has been paid for us to have the blessings and all that we have here. And so it's always so nice to see when schools pause to recognize our veterans and to support our military connected families. And, I was thinking as you were talking about Veterans Day celebrations, one of the things that I also appreciate is letter writing campaigns, whether that's any of the holidays, where we think about more than just our veterans, certainly our veterans, but our active duty members, and taking the time to write a nice little card or a little note. Because I know when I was on a 6-month cruise on the USS Iwo Jima, that receiving a letter from a random student was a huge thing, and it was really a bright spot. And so anything that we can do to support military connected families certainly is something we need to be doing. And anything we can do to say thank you and show our honor and respect for veterans is something we should be doing. And I'm just so very grateful that our Department of Public Instruction understands the importance of that work, to the point that they have an amazing educator like you who has that as not only a passion point for you personally and professionally, but also as a major part of your job duties in helping districts and helping schools serve our military connected families, and to ensure that we're not forgetting about our veterans and those who've offered so much of themselves for all of us.
And, I want to touch on one thing that you said, and that's about the Department of Public Instruction as a whole supporting our military families. And I must also acknowledge our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Catherine Truitt. A lot of people might not know this, but she is also a military spouse. Her husband is still serving. And so she has been a military spouse who has moved across states and countries, and has had military connected children herself. And so I think from the top down, it is absolutely a need and a must that we are aware of our military connected population, and we are doing all that we can to support them across our state.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that shout out, because it certainly reminds us all. We may not be aware of who has a connection to the military, but we're certainly grateful that they do, and grateful for their sacrifice, because, we could go into a deep well with just the conversation around what military families do to support the person who's serving in the military themselves during long deployments. And so to my friend, to my hero, Dr. Angie Mullenix, I want to thank you for what you do today and every day for so many. And I want to thank you for your service to our country. You, my friend, are a rock star and worthy of your own purple star for all that you do for so many. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on here today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Veterans Day.
Thank you, Angie. I hope that you enjoyed our time together with Dr. Angie Mullenix. Her ideas for supporting military-connected students and families, as well as her ideas for celebrating veterans, are top-notch and something we should all consider. What do you think? Please keep sharing your feedback on Twitter or X at Dr._Rob_Jackson, through email, or by commenting directly on the show notes page. If you think it's been helpful, please share the episode and podcast with your network of friends and colleagues. Thank you for spending time with me today, and thank you for all that you do for every student, every teacher, and every staff member. You are making a difference. If no one else has told you, I want you to know that I believe in you. Good day.
Thank you for listening to the Ed Leader Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and consider leaving a review with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts so that we may continue to grow the Ed Leader community. We hope that you have enjoyed your time with Dr. Jackson. Until next time.